All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're stepping into some pretty unusual, highly pragmatic territory. We're going to deconstruct this fascinating intercepted broadcast signed simply as Radio-MANNADORO. It's an absolute goldmine of social critique, but it's wrapped in this cold, almost surgical philosophy about human existence. We're going to look at exactly what this author thinks about our modern internet culture, and more importantly, what they actually think we should be focusing on instead. It's a huge pivot from digital hysteria straight into physical reality. So if you're the kind of person who appreciates a rational, grounded approach to all the internet's loudest noise, you are definitely in the right place. Okay, let's get to it.
Just listen to the sheer weight of this statement. We will pay the temporary rents of this body in this life until death and liquidation. I mean, wow, this is the absolute cornerstone of the Radio-MANNADORO broadcast. I wanted to start right here because it perfectly establishes the stark, pragmatic atmosphere of the source material we're deconstructing today. There's no sugarcoating, right? No grand spiritual promises whatsoever. It frames our entire physical existence as a strict, inescapable leasing contract. And as we'll see, the author uses this cold reality as a literal weapon against the superficial outrage that dominates so much of our digital lives.
Section 1. Beyond the Fake Red Pills. Navigating the Noise of the Digital Landscape.
So the author draws a really profound contrast here. On one side, they view the modern digital audience as greedy zombies, completely poisoned by what the text calls fake, rigged red pills. You know, that sensationalist, often politically charged conspiracy culture that's just everywhere online. The author basically argues that this constant stream of late disclosures and internet outrage doesn't actually enlighten anyone, it just manipulates them. Instead of terrorizing people with all this alarmism, the author insists that the truly valuable service is offering healthy advice, like concrete, rational guidance on how to actually live your life. It's a massive plea for utility over hysteria. To really hammer home just how degraded the author feels the internet consumer has become, the text uses this incredibly intense, haunting imagery, GMO beings from birth. The broadcast implies that by constantly feeding on this rigged digital information, people have been fundamentally, almost unnaturally altered. Like, they aren't just misinformed, they're structurally modified by a totally toxic media diet. And that highlights exactly why the author believes this kind of discourse actively damages our biological and mental condition, dragging us further and further away from natural, healthy living.
All right, Section 2. The useless alarmism of the web. The consequences of internet loudmouths. The author explicitly points a finger at the striloni de web, the web loudmouths who literally just peddle panic. And what's the actual result of their loud, alarmist content? Well, the broadcast notes that if you look at the comment sections, you really only ever see two reactions. And honestly, both are entirely useless. The first is extreme demoralization, just people paralyzed by fear and despair. And the second is this hysterical fanaticism, people screaming things like, they must pay, damn them. Neither of these reactions offers a practical solution to everyday living. They are just emotional dead ends, totally devoid of any concrete action to actually improve your own situation. Which leads us to this harsh, chilling judgment from the author. Pathetic insects. That is exactly how the broadcaster views those who waste their precious energy getting whipped into a frenzy by web loudmouths. It's a provocative, undeniably abrasive term for sure, but within the logic of the text, it kind of makes complete sense. If you're spending your days leaving hysterical comments and feeding into digital panic, you are entirely missing the point of your actual physical existence. You're acting small, completely distracted by the noise, while ignoring the absolute biological reality of your own life. You're acting small, completely distracted by the noise, while ignoring the absolute biological reality of your own life. Bringing us to Section 3, the body as temporary rent, the ultimate biological reality. Now, the crucial point here is this concept of temporary rent. This is the author's brilliantly simple analogy for human health and existence. If you strip away all the online noise, all those grand political conspiracies, what are you left with? You're left with a body. And this body is essentially a leased property. Think of it like renting a highly complex piece of machinery. You obviously wouldn't pour dirt into the gas tank of a leased car, right? Physical health, in this framework, isn't about magical cures or finding some ultimate secret to immortality. It's about the pragmatic, mandatory, daily maintenance required to keep the engine running smoothly. You literally have to take care of the property you are renting until the contract runs out. It really forces us to look at our bodies incredibly rationally. The text lays out this stark, unavoidable timeline for the lease. First, In this life, we take on the lease. Second, we have to pay the rent until the end. This means daily physical maintenance. Every single day you wake up, you owe rent on your biological form. And finally, death and liquidation, the absolute end of the contract. It's a very businesslike, totally unsentimental way of looking at the human lifespan. But the inescapable nature of this contract is exactly why the author is so frustrated with people wasting their time on internet hysteria. You have a lease to pay. Why on earth are you screaming at a screen? Finally, Section 4, the philosophy of minimum damage. Concrete advice for the rational survivor.
Let's distill this cryptic broadcast down to 3 concrete, rational pieces of advice. First up, stop terrorizing people. Alarmism is completely useless. Second, ignore the chatter of the web loudmouths. They are literally just generating noise for their own profit or ego. Third, and absolutely most importantly, focus your energy entirely on minimizing the damage. So what does this mean in practice? It means prioritizing scientifically backed methods for longevity and daily preventative habits over pointless internet arguments. It means getting up, moving your body, prioritizing your sleep, and actively managing your stress. It also means fueling that rented machinery properly. We're talking about incorporating natural preventative foods into your daily routine, things like antioxidant-rich berries, leafy greens, nuts, and clean proteins. It might not be glamorous, but these daily, highly practical actions are really the only logical way to manage our temporary rent.
The broadcast sums all of this up with this surreal, hauntingly poetic phrase. That's how it works. The rest are just fleas with a cough. The author is basically saying that this biological reality, the daily habits, the preventative maintenance, the absolute need to minimize damage is the fundamental truth of existence. Everything else, the internet drama, the rigged red pills, the hysterical fanaticism, it is utterly insignificant. It's literally just fleas with a cough. Tiny, annoying pests making microscopic noises that ultimately mean absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of your biological lease.
The broadcast wraps up with the phrase, "Le chiacchiere stanno a zero." Talk is cheap, or the chatter's at zero. It's the ultimate final dismissal of all that digital noise. Which brings us to the biggest question this text poses to all of us. As a rational audience, you really have to ask yourself, are you spending your limited time and energy screaming at the web, getting all worked up by loudmouths and fake outrage? Or are you actually focused on concrete, daily actions to minimize damage and maintain the biological property you live in? The lease is ticking and the rent is due every single day. Make sure you're paying attention to what actually matters. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.